Guys, move to one side, please. One side, please.
The boxing world has erupted with reactions to the electrifying showdown between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, with many sharing their thoughts on what proved to be an unforgettable clash. Here are some of the most interesting reactions. Before the bout, Steve Collins gave his bold prediction. Notably, Collins was the first man to defeat Chris Eubank Sr. when they fought 30 years ago. In an interview with TalkSport, the Celtic warrior shared his honest thoughts, admitting he found it difficult to choose a clear winner, saying, "I don't know who's going to win this. I genuinely cannot pick a winner. I can, pick reasons why I think either guy can win. I'm really looking forward to it because it's a good match, and I really can't pick a winner. Both guys are capable of beating each other." The legendary feud between the Eubank and Benn families has been reignited, with many declaring the April clash as one of the most significant moments in British boxing history. Benn faced the challenge of stepping up to middleweight, having spent most of his tumultuous professional career fighting at welterweight. The tension leading up to their grudge match was intense, highlighted by Eubank smashing an egg over Benn's head during their announcement press conference. Before the fight, Eubank stated, "I don't do shenanigans. I do what I believe is right, and I do what I want to do. I'm just being me." However, the stare-down on Tuesday passed without incident, as Eubank observed Benn calmly from a distance, noting, "This fight isn't about size or weight, it's about skill, it's about dedication, expertise, and experience were the key factors Chris Eubank Jr. emphasized leading up to the fight, confidently stating, "I'm a complete fighter. I've been doing this for so long now. I've forgotten more things than he knows, and that will show on the night. The experience dedication, and will. These will be the deciding factors. Echoing the words of his famous father, Eubank promised to dissect Benn, saying, "The procedure will be parliamentary. That's the only thing I can say about this. Everything will go how I want it to go. I will be like a matador in the ring, and Conor Benn will be the bull." Carrying on his father Nigel Benn's legacy, Conor Benn made it clear that the fight was also personal to him, stating, "It's always personal. Every opponent I fight is personal. People want to say it's strictly business. It's never business. If someone is trying to put their hands on me and render me unconscious, it's personal with every one of my opponents. But this one has more history, shall we say. I prepare hard. There aren't any tactics to hide. I'm going to come in there and give it to him, that's it." Benn further added, "You all know what you're getting. I work hard. Am I extremely confident? I'm confident as ever because I put the work in. It really does feel like a homecoming for me. It's one of those fights that never went away. I couldn't not give the British public this fight. It was a fight that just lingered and had to happen. Once I put this to bed, I'll drop back down to 147 lbs and do what I've got to do. I'm only up here at 160 lbs for these two fights, then I'm dropping back down." Meanwhile, it was announced before the fight that the World Boxing Council would. The winner of the Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn fight was backed by the World Boxing Council to potentially face Canelo Alvarez, with WBC President Mauricio Sulaiman describing Eubank versus Benn as a major event containing all the elements fans could hope for. Sulaiman highlighted the rivalry between the fathers, which evolved into a rivalry between their sons, the heated press conferences, and the social media exchanges, stating that when the bell rings, it will be a moment everyone will remember, and he hoped the fight would meet expectations. Although Eubank fought Benn at middleweight, he has experience boxing at super middleweight and has been mentioned as a possible future opponent for Canelo. Despite his move up to 160 lbs, Benn remains ranked third in the WBC's welterweight world rankings, and both fighters have been highly ranked for years and are considered top level in the sport. "A championship fight for the winner against Canelo is doable," Sulaiman said, adding that Canelo has embarked on a new stage of his career, with upcoming fights in Riyadh and Las Vegas, and the winner of Eubank versus Benn could become a major figure in boxing worldwide. A more realistic target for Eubank would be to face Canelo in 2026, while Benn is expected to return to welterweight and pursue world honors, telling Sky Sports, "I will be going back down to 147 lbs to win the world title." Meanwhile, Tony Bellew also shared his thoughts on the Eubank Jr. versus Benn fight, a contest that had divided opinions, as Eubank Jr. brought a wealth of. Tony Bellew noted that Chris Eubank Jr. brought a wealth of experience, having faced genuine world champions and former title holders. However, he had faltered in his most significant challenges, losing to the likes of George Groves and Billy Joe Saunders. Eubank was also the naturally larger fighter, while Benn had to step up 2 full weight classes from his usual 147 lbs to compete at 160, although there was a 10 lb rehydration clause on the morning of the fight. Despite being the younger fighter, Benn had lost some momentum in the ring, securing only 2 modest points victories in the United States since the cancellation of his first scheduled bout with Eubank following a positive doping test. Before that setback, Benn was riding a strong wave of success, delivering knockout wins over fighters like Chris Algieri and Samuel Vargas. This led some in the boxing world to believe that Benn possessed the power, aggression, and determination needed to take down Eubank. In an interview with First Round TV, former world champion Tony Bellew backed Conor Benn to finish the fight early, tipping him to secure a win within the first half of the bout. Bellew's support came after Benn was cleared to compete in the UK late last year following a provisional suspension during the investigation. Bellew described the fight as one of 2 halves, explaining that his heart was always with Conor, whom he called a good kid with a good heart. However, he added that if the fight went past 6 rounds, or more accurately, 8 rounds given Benn's exceptional fitness, it would become a tough night for Benn, as weight and size would start to play a major role. Bellew also remarked that he believed Chris Eubank Jr. was a terrible boxer, though he acknowledged Eubank was a better fighter than a pure boxer. He concluded by saying he was backing Conor Benn to win within the first 5 rounds, believing that Benn would catch, hurt, and overwhelm Eubank early on.
Always says Conor. I love the kid. He's a good kid with a good heart. But if this fight goes past 6 rounds, it's a hard night to win.
Seems that's the general consensus.
I think that 6 round mark is ever. You know what? I should say 8 rounds because Connor's extremely fit and proper. He's unbelievable, so I should go 8 rounds. It's when it gets to that stage that's where weight becomes a factor and size becomes a factor. I think that's when it shows on him. But then I don't think Chris Eubank Jr. is a very good boxer. I think he's a terrible boxer. I think he's a better fighter than he is boxer. I just think he can be copped. If I'm a betting man, I'm saying Conor Benn.
Nobody knows better what it takes to face Chris Eubank Jr. than Billy Joe Saunders. The former two-weight world champion, who has shared the ring with boxing greats like Canelo Alvarez and Andy Lee, famously faced Eubank Jr. in a major showdown back in 2014. Saunders built a commanding lead in that contest, although Eubank Jr. finished much stronger, nearly closing the gap before Saunders was awarded a split decision victory. Despite the fight taking place over a decade ago, the rivalry between Saunders and Eubank Jr. has not cooled. With the two regularly exchanging verbal jabs and often being linked to a rematch, Saunders, who continues to share his views on the sport, delivered his verdict ahead of Eubank Jr.'s clash with Conor Benn, saying, "As of late, he's looked a little bit old, should we say, and don't forget Eubank's not the kind of boxer to get behind his jab, get a nice lead, and use his footwork." In an interview with Box Nation, Saunders added that although Eubank has been in some good scraps, often against lesser opponents, he has still taken some damage. He suggested that if Conor Benn can catch Eubank clean with a shot similar to the one Liam Smith landed, Benn could knock him out. Meanwhile, Eddie Hearn and Nigel Benn were also drawn into the heated scenes after Eubank Jr. smashed an egg on Conor Benn's head during their face-off. The fight had captured the attention of the entire boxing community, with excitement and pride running high, and legends like Joe Calzaghe also weighing in as anticipation for the event reached a fever pitch. Joe Calzaghe, who shared the ring with Chris Eubank Sr. in 1997 and went undefeated by the end of his illustrious career, understood what it takes to step into the ring and offered his prediction for the Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn fight. The Welshman, who participated in numerous high-profile bouts, said, "Yeah, I think it's a tough one to call. Talent-wise, I think they're on the same sort of level, but normally, size wins fights, so I sort of edge with Eubank as he's the bigger guy, naturally." Former world champion Carl Froch also weighed in on the matchup and, like many others, found it challenging to predict a winner. In a video uploaded to his official YouTube channel, Froch explained that when considering variables like who had achieved more, who was bigger and stronger, and who had world-level experience, Chris Eubank Jr. clearly stood out. He noted that Eubank had fought George Groves and Billy Joe Saunders, beaten Arthur Abraham, and defeated James DeGale, a former world champion, proving himself at a higher weight class on the world stage. In contrast, Froch stated that Conor Benn had done little of major significance, acknowledging that while Benn had looked good knocking out former champion Chris Algieri was well past his prime. Froch concluded by saying that if he had to pick an immediate favorite,
who's done what and who's bigger, stronger man, and who's got the experience at world level. You're gonna have to say Chris Eubank Jr. He's fought Groves, he's fought Billy Joe Saunders, he's been in there and beat Arthur Abraham, James DeGale, former IBF super middleweight world champion. He beat him. So he's performed at a better level and proven that at a higher weight he kind of belongs around the world sort of world level status, where Conor Benn hasn't done anything. He's done nothing. Make no mistake. Yes, he banged out Chris Algieri, who was a former champ, and he looked good doing it. But it was a way past his best, Chris Algieri. I was working the commentary team for him alongside Roy Jones Jr. when Billy Joe Saunders fought Canelo Alvarez, and Chris was saying to me, "I'm not in the gym, I'm not training, I'm not interested in boxing anymore. I'm going to concentrate on my punditry." About 6 months later, I'm seeing getting knocked out by Conor Benn. I thought, what is going on? Why do these fighters do it? Obviously, some of them need the bun.